Good evening. Pastor Blansett, would you come up and lead us in prayer, please? Mr. Blansett.
God, we want to thank you for this awesome night to be here, and we want to be about your business, so give us wisdom. We want to do things according to your will. Bless this city, bless our nation. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I call the October 18th, 2021 Board of Aldermen meeting to order. City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Here. Here.
Here. Here.
And me. Here. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is new business deletion. We do not have any of those. So the next item are public comments. City Clerk, do we have any this evening?
No.
No public comments, so we will move on to the next item, which is the consent agenda. These items are considered on the consent agenda so that Board of Aldermen by unanimous consent can designate routine items to be approved in one motion. Tonight, we have the approval of the October 4th, 2021 Board of Aldermen meeting minutes, expenditures through October 14th, 2021, and the September 2021 financials.
Ms. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is unfinished business. We do not have any of that this evening, so we will move on to new business. The first item is discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding an ordinance approving the final plat, New Life Estates, replat lots 1A, 2A, part of Section 32, Township 49 North, Range 29 West, Oak Grove, Jackson County, Missouri. Mr. Randall, do you have a report for that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The final plat before the board tonight is essentially a minor replat between two lots, New Life Estates Lot 1A and 2A. The proposed final plat simply adjusts the lot lines and reallocates a portion of what was Lot 2A into Lot 1A. Both parcels still meet all necessary zoning requirements. There are no other significant changes, and the proposed changes won't impact utility easements or access to either parcel. Thank you. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions for city staff?
I move for the first and second reading of the proposed ordinance by title only.
Second. We have a motion and a second for the first and second reading of the proposed ordinance by title only. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. City Clerk, would you please read the full bill 2 times?
An ordinance approving the final plat, New Life Estates, replat lots 1A and 2A, part of Section 32, Township 49 North, Range 29 West, Oak Grove, Jackson County, Missouri. An ordinance approving the final plat, New Life Estates, replat lots 1A and 2A, part of Section 32, Township 49 North, Range 29 West, Oak Grove, Jackson County, Missouri.
I move for adoption of the ordinance.
Second. We have a motion and a second for the adoption of the ordinance. Any discussion? City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Jim Shrout,
Yes.
Jeremy Taylor,
Yes.
Kelly Netto,
Yes.
Kim Vickers,
Yes.
Brad Alexander.
Yes.
Motion is approved and the ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding a request by the Oak Grove School District to waive building fees for the planned renovations and improvements to the existing Oak Grove School District campus. Is that you again, Mr. Randall?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
So the Oak Grove School District is requesting that the board waive building permit fees for the elementary school renovation and expansion. As you may recall, the board approved the site plan and design review of this expansion back on August 16th of this year. The board previously waived fees for work on the high school and primary buildings, contingent that the school contract with IBTS directly to conduct inspection and plan review. Staff would recommend that if the board does waive the fees, that a similar agreement be attached to that. I will say that we have not had any issues with the high school or the primary school. With the school district contracting with IBTS, it's been a very great relationship between the school district, the city, and IBTS on that front. So with that, happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you.
How much approximately are the building fees?
The building fees for the elementary school would be about $12,200.
And is that something that we normally do?
Yeah, so we would, typically on a commercial building like this, we would hire IBTS to do that work. So really, this is just taking out that step of us having to charge a fee to the school district, then paying us, and then us contracting with IBTS. So I will add, this would not cost the city anything because we wouldn't be doing the inspections. IBTS would be doing the inspections, so we wouldn't have the expense, but then we also wouldn't be generating the revenue from the building permit fees itself.
Thanks.
Is that written in the agreement, just like you said? You said you recommended that. Would that be written in the agreement?
Yeah, so the motion would, would say that, the board would waive the building permit fees contingent that the school district contract with IBTS directly.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to waive the building fees for the Oak Grove School District with IBTS doing the inspections. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding a presentation by Burns and McDonnell for a city sewer system.
Thank you, Mayor. That'd be me. With us today is Rochelle Lowe and Alicia Chase with Burns and McDonnell, and they were here to give a presentation regarding our inflow and infiltration reduction program. We had reached out to Burns and McDonnell and two other engineering firms to provide engineering services so they could provide a systematic approach to combat our I&I problem and to check for future development sewer capacity. It was one of the benefits of this model. Typically, we would spend our I&I funds. I'd come to this board and we would do like slip lining of pipes and manholes. And that doesn't solve all the I&I problems. There's more to I&I than just doing that. So that's why we reached out to Burns and McDonnell. Regarding the action, we're not asking any action tonight. We're just asking we want them to give you a presentation, and then you guys kind of digest this, and then probably the next board meeting, we'd like to come back with a professional service contract for approval or denial of this. So with that, I will turn it over to Rochelle and Alicia.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Is it on? Can you guys?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you, guys. Thank you for letting us come in this evening and discuss with you the I&I assessment and reduction plan. So we've been working with Tom over the last couple of months to develop this plan that can help the city of Oak Grove tackle inflow and infiltration and also help you make smart decisions as you continue to grow. Tom has shared with us some of the potential development that's going on in the city. So reducing your I&I and coming up with a plan that will help you guys smartly grow in the future is what this assessment and reduction plan is going to do. So Alicia's up here, and we're going to kind of be going back and forth between this, so bear with us. We weren't sure how this was going to be set up tonight, but all right, so you guys kind of wanted to walk through what your existing system looks like right now and kind of talk about what we know. So you guys have about 42 miles of gravity sewer system. You have 5 miles of force main and 6 lift stations within your system. And all of these different assets have varying ages and varying conditions, and that's what can cause I&I. With these varying ages, condition begins to deteriorate, and I&I is then becomes an issue. So in general, flow in your system is routed from the southwest to the northeast, and it's routed to your treatment plant, which your treatment plant sees about 600,000 gallons per day of flow at your treatment plant. But when it rains or when you have a wet weather event, that flow can be about 4 to 5 million gallons per day. So that's what this graph is kind of showing. So this is taken from your master plan that was completed in 2015, and just so those numbers I said are a little less in this graph because you guys have grown and you've had more development and things, and the condition of the pipe has decreased. So some of those values have changed. But in general, the amount of peak weather flow is about 6 to 8 times that average daily flow. So what that tells us is that there really is a significant inflow and infiltration problem that you have going on right now throughout the city. But what we don't know right now is exactly where it is and how to target it. And like Tom said, you guys have been doing a lot of things over the years to go in and line those pipes and try to improve the condition of the pipe, but that doesn't always mean that you're targeting the right spots for inflow and infiltration to remove that from your city. So what is infiltration and why is it important to remove it? Well, first, flow in the system during wet weather events really means that more flow, that you're treating more flow than you need to, and that costs money. So not only does it cost money to treat it, but it costs money to convey it. If you had to build bigger pipes, it costs more money to convey it, then it costs more money also in energy to pump it. Like we said, you have 6 lift stations, so you have to pump it. So really, what we're trying to do is find those defects in that pipe and improve that system so that you're not allowing that flow to get in, so that it's not getting all the way to your treatment plant. So we're going to help put together like a targeted plan that's going to look at critical areas in the city and remove inflow and infiltration and help really regain capacity in your existing system. So you have existing pipes. They, by doing some simple things and finding that inflow and infiltration sources, we can regain that capacity that you used to have. All right, so I'm going to dive just a little bit more. I don't know, you guys might already all know about inflow and infiltration, where exactly it comes from, but this is a really good figure that I like to talk about what is infiltration, what's inflow. So they're really 2 separate things, and infiltration is that flow that when it rains, the water infiltrates through the ground and gets through defects that are in your pipes below grade. So those are like cracks in the pipe, joints that are misaligned, roots that have grown through the pipe that allow water to get in. And those defects up here, kind of hard to see, but they're labeled in the white ones. So on your sewer mains, even on private laterals on homes, those can all contribute to infiltration. So then inflow is really that water that is coming in through direct connections. So those are the connections that might be like gutters, roof drains that are connected to the system, or maybe a manhole lid that is missing from the middle of a field or a yard where water can drain into that. It's acting more like a storm sewer than a sanitary sewer. So those examples are those ones that are up there in the black labels. So really, why is it important to remove it? Just again, it's that expense to treat it. It can create, the more water that you get in there, you're gonna have potential sanitary sewer overflows or backups into people's homes during wet weather. So if you're getting calls or complaints during wet weather, you're having some issues with I&I. And then again, it's reducing that system capacity and not potentially allowing for that future growth that we wanna see here in Oak Grove. So what is an inflow and infiltration assessment? So that's what Tom said, we've been working on developing is an assessment plan and reduction plan for the city of Oak Grove. So there are really 4 different components to an inflow and infiltration assessment. First, there's the quantification, and that's determining how much flow is there and measuring it really. And then you identify it. So it's actually going out and finding the defects. And so doing field services, putting cameras in the pipe, doing manhole inspections. And then there's rehabilitation. So that's when, once we find it, we're gonna come up with a design on how to repair it. And then it's verification. Okay, so we've done it, and now the project's complete, but we gotta go make sure that, did you do enough? Did you remove as much as you thought you would? So really though, this project that we're working on for the assessment part is really just looking at that first piece, that quantification. 'Cause that's the important piece, is really finding out how much you have. And that can consist of 3 different things. Your flow monitoring, so you're going out and you're measuring it. You're putting measuring tools into the pipes. You're doing a flow analysis to break out those different parts to find out where's inflow, where's infiltration. And then you're going to rank your system. Where's the leakiest? Where do you have better pieces of the system? And so that will comprise like that whole identification piece of it. And that's what we want to kind of go into a little bit more today. So here is a map of your existing system. The black lines here and the white and the black dots, those are all your sanitary pipes and your manholes. You've probably seen this a lot. You got the red, which are your force mains, and then your like little red squares are the, or triangles, I'm sorry, don't know my shapes, are the force main, or are the lift stations. So first thing we have to do is get this map of your system. It's your GIS system. And Tom's done a really good job of keeping this up to date, and it has a lot of detailed information in here that we can use. So what we started to do is already look at how can we break up your system to measure it the best, to make sure that we have measurable areas that are contributing to the overall city. So in those areas, like downstream of those different colored areas, is where you put flow measuring devices and where you go in and actually figure out, okay, how much flow do you have? And we're going to do that in the springtime, because in the spring is when it rains. And so we want to not only know how much rain or how much flow you have during dry weather when it's not raining, just on normal average day, but how much do you have when it rains? And then that's when I'm going to hand it over to Alicia, and she's going to get a little bit more into the different components of the flow and what we're going to do during the flow analysis.
Hello, I'm Alicia Chase. So I work on a lot on flow analysis and building of models and I&I assessment type projects. Once we get all of the flow data collected, we'll be breaking out the different components of the flow data. So this graph up here, if you merged all the colors together, that's what the meter would give us. So the flow meter would give us that compilation of flows. And then we would analyze it to get the dry weather flow out. So that would be the green line, that green bar there. That's looking for the average daily dry weather flow. And in a residential area, it'll have a slightly different shape than a commercial area. You know, residential is going to be driven by the people that use the system, and so it'll be higher in the morning and higher in the evenings when everybody's home. So we'd be looking at each meter, developing average daily dry weather flows, and then from there you can look and see what the wet weather contribution is. The wet weather contribution is the blue and the red on this graph. The blue is the inflow. That's a fast flow. That's going to be the flow that gets into the system fairly quickly after the rainfall. And then the red is the infiltration. And that's the stuff that gets in slower through the ground, through the cracks and things. These components, we would take them and we would build them back. We would take all these components and bring them back together in a model so that the model would represent this. The flow analysis is part of the purpose of the flow analysis is to develop that rainfall to response relationship that you see in your system. So how is the system responding when it is raining to each rainfall? And developing that and then bringing that back into the model. So that's what we would be doing with the flow components. We would also take that wet weather analysis that we did and look at how much is happening in each meter catchment. So this is just a sample of like another area where we've looked at the rankings of which meter catchments, which area each meter collected flow from, which ones are the leakiest. And then we would develop for Oak Grove a map that fits your system based on where the flow analysis has identified the highest inflow and infiltration. And that builds toward being able to target where you're going after that inflow and infiltration and targeting the leakiest basins first. So we'll switch back.
Yeah. All right. So while we're starting to evaluate those I&I targeted areas, we're also, like Alicia said, going to be building a hydraulic model. And that model is really going to be a digital replica of your sewer system. And it really helps us to predict how your system is working now and how it's going to predicted to work in the future when you add these new proposed developments that are going on throughout the city. So for the existing system, our goal is really to evaluate and figure out like an appropriate level of service. So what level of service are you currently providing to your citizens and to the community? And then we're gonna work with Tom and the city to say, okay, this is the appropriate level now for the existing system, so you're providing this, and in the future, you wanna continue to provide that, that level of service. So we're gonna build a future conditions model, and this is what this is kind of showing, that incorporates a comprehensive, like development plan, and also your existing design standards, zoning plans, and all of that are all combined to then bring you into this future model that's going to help you grow smartly and figure out what capital improvements you really need to make within your existing sewer system. So now I'm gonna let Alicia kind of talk about that model development quick.
Yes, so the model development, it takes all those parts and pieces from the components from the flow analysis, and we bring them back together, and we calibrate the model to that rainfall and system response, and get the model reasonably close to that response as we can through our calibration process. And then once the model is calibrated, it's a great tool to run the what-if scenarios. So what level of service are you providing today? What level of service do you want to provide in the future? And run those what-if scenarios. The level of service is how well the system conveys the flow today. We'd run it on an existing system right now and see where you're at so that we can understand what the current system capacity is. Then we would be taking all of the future growth components that you've identified, bring those into the model, and then look at what this future system capacity looks like. And as we develop those capacities, that helps us then develop the trigger points for why different projects are needed. So we would be looking at the system capacity at those various stages so that we would understand why the project is needed. Is it needed for system capacity existing, or is it needed for future capacity needs? And then this map here, it shows just kind of a sample of what a system level of service might look like.
Yeah, so this is really a good tool that Tom and Public Works can use. So when a developer comes in and says, hey, we want to develop in this area, you can look here, and those pipes that are in red are those potential pipes that don't have capacity right now. So what do you need to do to provide that capacity for that development to come online is basically what, this is another tool that would be a part of that. So once the future hydraulic model is complete, we really get to start developing an I&I reduction plan and a capital improvement plan that are really integrated plans together. So we're gonna be looking at, reclaiming that capacity within your existing system and doing that by saying, okay, where is future development gonna happen? And can we reclaim that capacity by doing inflow and infiltration reduction plans? And so it's not just, ranking the system and saying where's the leakiest, but where does it make the most cost-effective approach to doing that? Because you have future needs in those areas. So here's a map of your sewer system, and just kind of highlighted here some of the areas I've been talking with Tom about those proposed developments. So you can see there's a lot of stuff going on. A lot of areas, and all those areas, as we start to kind of look in those areas, we're going to say, okay, we might have ranked one of these areas as a high I&I, but it's not really anywhere where there's potential issues, and maybe it's not causing a capacity issue during existing conditions. So we're going to be able to do that smartly and not just go line everywhere, but do it really where it makes sense in the right place is the idea to move forward with. So I'm going to, again, hand it over to Alicia, and she's going to talk a little bit more about some of those tools that'll be available to Tom and Public Works.
So some of the tools that we'll be developing, one of them is a capacity spreadsheet. So we'll have the model that will show what the existing capacity is. And we take that data out of the model and put it into a spreadsheet format so that you can more quickly analyze developers that come in with specific flows and specific loading locations. So what you can do is you can take this spreadsheet, it's really small, sorry. You can take the spreadsheet, and in the blue boxes, you can enter in like what type of development it is or what projected flow and where they're planning to load. And then it would populate down from there, white being has capacity, yellow and orange being that that's kind of a caution, and then the red means that it's out of capacity. And so it would go all the way from where you load it, all the way through the system to the wastewater treatment plant. So it would track that new load all the way through. And then you can kind of see real quickly whether or not the existing system has that capacity. The map kind of to the left there is just a schematic of the system too, so that you can see it visually, where are your major impacts and what's potentially causing those impacts. So it's just a real quick tool that can be used. It goes hand in hand with kind of the trigger points that we've talked about, where they're, when the development happens, you want to be ready to have that project that's needed for that ready to go. So you wouldn't develop you wouldn't put the project in place before the development is there. So the trigger points help guide when the project would need to be occurring and when you would need that project. Is it an existing, is it a future? And then we'd be looking at this as the plans are kind of meant to allow that smart growth and be able to be flexible so that as things develop, as developments come in, you can address those quickly and determine whether or not the existing system has capacity and whether or not additional work would be needed for those capacity improvements. So I'll let Michelle take over.
Yeah, so I'll just speak on this slide really quick too. So, we put together a hydraulic model, and it's pretty, those models are pretty sophisticated, and Alicia's super smart and can run them better than me. But this is really something simple that allows, what I think that is we're able to provide is something simple that Tom and Public Works can easily use when someone comes in to say, hey, we want to develop here, and he can just load this in and get a really quick idea if that's, and allow them to continue on and not, delay any potential like efforts moving forward. So just kind of to wrap up, we've kind of went through all these different steps. There's a lot of information there, but how we're going to approach the inflow and infiltration assessment reduction plan. I was thinking about this and looking at your guys' website, and the city slogans really come grow with us. And it sounds like, people are really wanting to come and continue to live and grow here in the city. And so this plan is really going to put together that plan to give you these reliable tools and data to make smart decisions, to grow smart and spend your money where it makes sense, and really give you that cost-effective approach to reducing I&I and building future system capacity where it's needed, and not just based on, a plan that might be sitting on the shelf for 5 years, but it's really something that's not just static. It's a revolving plan that you can continue to use as you grow. So that's all we have. Tom?
Thank you, and thanks for your attention in this matter. I asked them to have the presentation, would kind of outline the severity of what we're combating here. Because as you can see, we previously were just kind of focusing on infiltration, and there's a lot more to this I&I problem than just infiltration. And also growth. I know every time we have a big preliminary plat going through planning and zoning, there's always that concern. Do we have capacity? And usually those new developments are out on the fringe of the city. It has to, the sewage has to travel through the existing parts of the city. So this plan will help us figure out if we do have capacity. So with that, would be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, because that is what comes up during those planning and zoning.
Right, and this tool will allow it to easily happen.
Yeah. I mean, thank you, ladies. As weird as it sounds, I think that sewer system's fascinating. We just take for granted that we flush a toilet and do those things, and all this is underneath the ground, just taking care of itself when it doesn't. So I really appreciate your presentation. I don't know if the board, do you have any questions, the board, for these ladies?
All right, thank you for coming.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
But yes, Tom, the number one thing is that, and so processing that, knowing ahead of time when those builders come in or we do those would be very helpful. Yeah, thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is information reports, and we will start over here tonight. Scott, do you have a report?
No report.
All right. Kim, do you have a report?
Two things, really. The last food truck night
Oh,
is
yeah.
this Thursday, and they'll be in the parking lot at 4:30 until 8 o'clock. And then, of course, Lick Skillet is this weekend, the 22nd and 23rd, so.
Yes, and to add to that, we were going to try to use the message boards to advertise this for the last food truck, but they will be occupied advertising Lick Skillet days, correct?
That would be my concern, is
Yeah.
running the battery down and not
Right.
having the time to recharge.
So you guys all can advertise the last food truck of the season. So thank you, Kim. Chief, do you have a report?
No, other than just as Kim reminded, Lick Skillet Days, and please watch for traffic altering in the coming days, come Friday and Saturday, around downtown area.
Thank you. Tom?
With the exception of picking up some miscellaneous cones and barricades throughout the city, the resurfacing contract is done. So hopefully everyone had the chance to drive at least Salem to see all the nice striping and the crosswalks and everything else. And it drives really smooth, so
It sure does.
thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
all.
Mr. Sherwood, do you have a report?
I would just add that in addition to Lick Skillet, we also have a home football game Friday night.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Mr. Williams, do you have a report? No report. Mr. Randall?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So included in the September financials in your packet are the sales tax figures for the year. I'm happy to report that we continue to see positive sales tax growth. Now, the figures in the packet are not a perfect comparison year over year. As you may recall, last year, in fiscal year 2020, we received a corrected sales tax remittance from the Missouri Department of Revenue due to a business in the village of Oak Grove incorrectly remitting that sales tax to us. So when you correct for that, we're currently seeing about a 9% growth in sales tax year over year. This is due to a combination of both new businesses as well as growth in existing businesses. And I just would like to add too that I&I is not unique to Oak Grove. Every sewer system has some level of I&I. And one easy way to remember the importance of I&I is 1 gallon of I&I reduction is equal to 1 gallon of capacity increase. And it's easier and cheaper to reduce 1 gallon of I&I than it is to build new capacity. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Brad, do you have a report?
No report.
Jeremy? No report. Jim?
No report.
Kelly?
No report.
Kim?
Salem looks fabulous. Thank you.
My report is I'm excited for the Lick Skillet Days. The board, I think some of them may come out for the superhero run on Saturday morning. If you want to know what we're dressed as, you'll have to come out and see us. So we look forward to it. Thank you, everyone. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?